Over the years, downtown Lansing's Washington and Capitol Avenues have had a multitude of varied businesses, from horse barns to upscale restaurants. Angie Vlahakis, Lansing native, MSU graduate and owner of one such eating establishment, the never-to-be-forgotten Jim's Tiffany, joins us to share his memories of his restaurant, its beginning, and the family who was involved in the downtown area. Angie, what are some of your earliest memories of your family's business, where it was located, the services, employees, etc.?
My earliest memories are in the late 1930s, when the only way I could get to see my father was to go down to the restaurant with my mother and have Sunday dinner, because the restaurant business was 7 days a week. And in those days, especially with the Depression it was a 7-day-a-week job for my father. And it was, at that time, a white tablecloth restaurant with counter service as well. And I still have a photograph of my father and myself standing in front of the restaurant celebrating 4th of July. The exact year, I would say, about 1936 or 37.
Where was it located?
It was located at 203 South Washington Avenue, where Kelly's is now located. Mm-hmm. If you're to walk into Kelly's and look up at the ceiling, you'll see the original tin ceiling that was in my father's restaurant. And we were there from 1914 till 1937. And then in 1938, my father moved to the location next to Consumers Power Company on Michigan Avenue.
Did you tell us the name of the restaurant? What was the name of the restaurant?
The original name of the restaurant was the Lansing Cafe, and then eventually in 1949, my father, when he was on the Michigan Avenue location, he purchased the building next door to the restaurant, which was then located next to Consumers Power Company, and put in an establishment known as Jim's Bar. Over a period of years, the name became Jim's Tiffany Place. Mm-hmm. But originally there were two separate establishments right next door to each other, because in those early days, in the 40s still, some people just didn't want to go into a bar, and so we had the restaurant separate from the bar, next to each other, mm-hmm. with an opening. But we found out that over the years, people's attitudes towards drinking, shall we say, became more open-minded, and we eventually combined the two businesses, and it became Jim's Tiffany Place. I started working for my father in 1940, and then I successfully sold the restaurant in 1980.
What were the salaries? How much did you get when you worked for your father? What about the other employees?
We had payroll books that from 1932 that showed that servers working 7 days a week were paid as little as $6 a week, and they existed on the tip income that they made. And I still remember this was in the 1940s, that if somebody made a quarter tip, it was something to yell out loud in the dining room that, oh, somebody left me a quarter. Nowadays, you'd better not leave a quarter.
What kind of fare did they have?
Well, basically everything from steaks, seafood, sandwiches. At that time, from 1914 through the early 1960s, it was just a general American fare. The ethnic foods were not popular at that time. It was strictly steaks, chops, clam chowder as a soup, and the finer types of food that we now call ethnic foods were not popular at all.
What did you get for a cup of soup?
A cup of soup was 15 cents. In 1914, I have the menu to show it, that a porterhouse steak for two was $2. And you could have a T-bone steak with onions on it for 95 cents. So you can imagine
Quite a change.
pay rate was very, very low at that time, but also the cost of eating was very, very low.
Now, when you were involved with Jim's Tiffany, things changed.
Yes.
What was it like then?
Well, it was very challenging, to say the least. My father had been very successful over the years during very, very hard times to exist, to stay in business. And he urged me to go on to college after I got out of the service. And I went to Michigan State University and received a degree in hotel and restaurant management. So here's this young kid coming back and trying to introduce new ideas to a well-established restaurant. And at times it became, shall we say, conflicting, for lack of a better word. But eventually my father realized that times have changed, and he went along with the various changes. And we introduced Greek food as a specialty in about 1967, when we had our first, what we called Zorba night. And those were smashing successes. And people said, well, why just have it one night every couple of months? Why not have it every night? And eventually our menu, a certain portion of the menu became ethnic, selling Greek items. Mm-hmm. And it was immensely successful. Mm-hmm. We gained a national reputation and had numerous awards nationally and through the Michigan region as well for our food and service.
Your employee force enlarged from
Yes.
the early days.
It went from 6 people at the depths of the Depression. When I sold in 1980, we had 75 some employees.
Oh my, oh my.
So it was
And what about the surrounding area? When your father, the early days, do you remember what was surrounding the restaurant, and then what?
Yes, I do. The Washington Avenue location, I remember the Home Dairy, for instance, which was new. That was brought into Lansing in the early 1930s. And I remember the Bush's jewelry store that was located right next door to our restaurant. And the Downey Hotel, which was further down on Grand Avenue. There was a number of other hotels that have long since disappeared. And there was movie houses, the Strand Theater, which eventually became the Michigan Theater, that was located in the same block as our restaurant. And the Gladmere Theater, which was at the other end of Washington Avenue. Numerous other places, Sproul's, Lansing Dry Goods Store, Knapp's, which was immensely successful, Arbaugh's restaurant, I mean not restaurant, but Arbaugh's department store, and Mills Dry Goods.
Yes. The
peanut shop. Coming here for the interview, I drove by the peanut shop, which is still in existence in downtown Lansing.
I wonder if that's about the only one.
I'm trying to think of another one that
Kozacek's.
Kozacek's, yes. The peanut shop and Kozacek's. And the Kozacek's, the original founder, and Mr. Kozacek Sr., Dick Kozacek, they were all good customers of ours.
Now, when did you close Jim's?
I did not close Jim's. I decided in 1980 that 40 years in the restaurant business was enough. And so I was able to sell the restaurant in December of 1980, and I accepted an offer to go to Michigan State University on the faculty of the Hotel and Restaurant School. And Jim's survived for another 8 years, I believe. It went out of business in 1988. At the time I sold it, it was a very successful restaurant, but unfortunately, the new owners, anyway, were not as successful. I spent 13 years then at Michigan State University on the faculty in the hotel restaurant school.
I remember it was a beautiful building that it was in. Can you describe the building at all?
Yes. Well, it was one building was built in 1899, and then the other building was built in 1883, and we managed to get old photographs of it. This was now in the 1960s when I had taken over the management of the restaurant. And I decided that we should restore the exterior of the building to its original state. And at the time it was demolished in about 1990, it was a jewel because we had managed to get the original plans. We went and did a lot of exploring to find out what the building did look like, the outside, the facade. And it's one of the, shall we say, tragedies of urban renewal.
Were there Tiffany, the name Tiffany was there, were there stained glass windows in it?
Yes. One interesting piece of furniture that was in the bar and the lounge was the original back bar from the Epicure restaurant, which was in the 200 block of North Washington Avenue. And at the time urban renewal came in to demolish that building that the Epicure was in, we managed to rescue the back bar, which was a beautiful stained glass back bar. And by the time we sold Jim's, we had close to 100 Tiffany era lamps. None of them signed Tiffany's on premises, but these were all authentic old Tiffany lamps hanging over each one of the booths and in the hallways. It was quite a collection.
That I remember. Well, now you've shared with us those memories. I'd also like to ask you about your heritage, your Greek heritage. When did your family come to the area, and why did they come here?
Well, opportunity, basically. If you ever had the opportunity to go to Greece and see the land, the area that my father came from, it was abject poor, very poor. And in 1902, my grandfather came to America to seek opportunities of advancement. And in 1907, he sent a boat ticket to my father back in the old village and said, come with me and visit me in Omaha, Nebraska. So my father arrived here in 1907 and settled down in Omaha, Nebraska. But at that time, things were extremely, shall we say, touchy. There were riots going on, particularly against ethnic groups, and my father felt very uncomfortable there. And he ended up in Chicago. And from there, with contacts from other relatives from the same village as my father, from Asopol, Greece, he found out that there were more relatives of his in Lansing. So in about 1912, my father moved from Chicago to Lansing. While he was in Chicago, he was a waiter. When he was originally in Omaha, I forgot to mention this, he worked in the cattle yards, he worked as a water boy on the railroad under extremely difficult conditions. So by 1912, then he was in Lansing and worked at various restaurants. He worked at the Old Boston Cafe, which was in the 100 block of West Michigan Avenue, next to the Olds Hotel. And he worked at a number of other restaurants, gained enough experience, and he and two other partners decided they'd start their own restaurant. So in 1914, they located at 203 South Washington Avenue.
They must have found the Lansing area a welcoming area for ethnic groups then.
Yes, at that time, Oldsmobile, Rio was booming, Fisher Body was booming, and there was opportunity for people to make a good living.
And is your mother of the same heritage?
Yes, my mother, bless her soul, came to America in 1920. And she was brought over here by her aunt and uncle, and she ended up in Grand Rapids. And in 1925, my father, being single still at that time, heard about a very beautiful young lady that lived in Grand Rapids. And he managed to convince some friends of his in Grand Rapids, I'd like to see who this young lady is. Well, my mother, being a very, very pretty young lady, said, okay, I will agree to come to Grand Rapids to meet this gentleman, but if I don't like what he looks like, that's it. Because normally in those days there were matched marriages, fixed marriages, call them what you want. And they agreed that they would show up at the basement of Woolworths. Woolworths at that time was at Allegan Street and Washington Avenue. And in the basement of Woolworths was a billiard room, which my father, when he had a little bit of time off, he would go down and play pool. So my mother came here with her two uncles, and they brought her down the staircase at Woolworths into the basement area so that my father could get a glimpse of her and she could get a glimpse of him. Well, to make a long story short, she liked what she saw. He absolutely fell in love with what he saw. And so they agreed for a follow-up meeting, again with the two uncles present, to meet at an apartment that another Greek person was renting at that time. And there were the two uncles, there was my mother, and there was my father, all decked out in his suit, tie. It was a hot summer day. He was absolutely sweating, nervous again. And my mother said, relax, take your tie off, take your coat off, and we'll talk. So that was, again, 1925. Anyway, they ended up being married in Grand Rapids. And I was born in 1927, and then my sister Joanne was born in 1930, my sister Lorraine was born in 1933, and we've been blessed with a long life. All three of us are still here. But that was the love story that lasted for well over 50 years.
Wonderful story. Well, thank you, Angie. You've given us much valuable information, and it's good to know about the impact that your family has had on the Lansing community as well as the Lansing community on you.
If I may close by adding, my father was so revered by his all of his customers and so well known that he was honored at a joint session of the legislature. I can't remember the exact date, but he was actually given a plaque and requested to speak in front of a joint meeting of the Senate and the House. And I think that was aside from his family contacts, that was the high point of his life.
Do you have a copy of his remarks?
No, unfortunately, but we have a photograph of him that we cherish that shows him receiving the plaque, and the president pro tem of the Senate and the various politicians were there.
How wonderful.
Yes.
Well, again, thank you so
much. My pleasure. And I compliment you for the effort that you are taking here to preserve this information.